Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Daryl Urbanski, your host as always. And today we are joined by Martin Probst, an esteemed learning professional of the year, acclaimed #1 international bestselling author, facilitator, trainer, speaker, mentor, and coach. With over 2 decades of global experience in self-development and human potential, Martin is renowned for his expertise in leadership skills and professional development. His accolades include over 24 personal transformation certifications and a significant list of reviews on impact on middle and upper management through superior confidence and smarter choices. Martin's mission revolves around maximizing human potential and peak performance in supportive work environments. He's a prolific author of 7 books, including an international bestseller, and creator of the innovative Profound methodology. His transformative approach has touched the lives of many managers worldwide, offering leadership development books, online training, public speaking workshops, and personalized coaching. Martin's dedication to leadership excellence is evidenced in his diverse roles, including board memberships and volunteering commitments, showcasing his commitment to fostering leadership and community development. I've asked Martin to join us here today to share his story, plus help us all reach our peak potential. So Martin, thank you so much for joining us, my friend. How are you?
Good, Daryl. Thank you for having me. And what an introduction. I can't wait to hear what I actually have to say now. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. And before we hop into a lot of the leadership and the do's and don'ts and lessons you've learned, how did you even get into this field, and how did you become such a go-getter? Is this kind of a family trait where your parents really active leaders involved in the community too, or?
The parents were very active in the community. I grew up in a very small village in Switzerland, very countryside. Population was, I think, about 250 inhabitants, 1,200 cows and about 9,000 chicken. So very countryside. But what really was important, very early days, even today when I go back, is that community spirit, the supporting each other, and the interpersonal skills that kick in as well.
I love that. Obviously, that sounds like a great kind of real salt of the earth upbringing, to be in such a small community, really involved in a lot of animal husbandry. I feel like some of that is lost in city kids. They don't understand seasons. There's a season for things, and reaping before sowing before you reap type thing. There's a lot of life lessons just to be learned through watching the sun, the phases of the moon, knowing the seasons of what's coming, having to work today and planning for tomorrow. Is that something that you notice a lot? Maybe I don't want to jump around too much, but in your work, do you feel that some of those real kind of, like I said, like farmer principles, are those often missing in a lot of the corporate environments that you work in? And you think that might, I don't want to put words in it, but yeah.
It's fascinating that you bring that up. And to be truthful, I get a lot of methodologies, a lot of inspiration by nature. I think nature teaches us everything that we need to know. The big challenge that we have these days, we live in such a fast-paced environment where we just don't have time to stop and reflect and observe. So you mentioned the 4 seasons before. I often talk about 4 seasons in relationships, in business. We're talking a lot about honeymoon periods. That to me is spring. It's beautiful. Everything is spring. They're sprouting, things growing. Come summer, of course, you maintain things, you get used to it, you see the benefit. In autumn, you harvest. That's quite often a financial point. You put effort into something, you harvest. Same with food. But then comes winter. And a lot of people don't like winter. Yeah. It's bare, it's cold, especially in Europe.
Yeah.
And people see that as a very negative season. And what they miss is that part of really planning for the next spring. It's the same in relationships, isn't it? The 7-year itch. You can divide that almost in the 4 seasons. And if you don't think ahead, if you don't reflect what has grown, what has actually worked, what you appreciate, what you like and love, and you miss to plan for spring again, nothing gonna grow. And that's usually where relationships fall apart, where partnerships fall apart, where collaboration collapses, because we don't see winter as a positive thing. So there's already a lesson, hopefully, for our listeners.
Yeah, I love
Mother
that.
Nature, very important.
One of my mentors told me something I think was really valuable. He said, never make an important life decision until you've been through 4 seasons with someone. In the sense of,
Love it.
right? If you, like, I know people, they've been dating. I remember, so I'm married now, and my wife and I, we were together for 7 years before we decided to get married. I was in a relationship prior to this that was just shy of 5 years, 5 years or 6 years. I forget now. It was so long ago. But it was just shy of 5, 6 years, and it fell apart. And then I meet people, they've been together 6 months and they're planning on getting married. I'm like, how do you even know this person? I have a personal rule where I feel like we all have these circles of relationships, like we're at the core nuclear and then outwards. I feel like I'm very hesitant to allow anyone into my inner circle until like we've gone through something together, because everyone, I always say, everyone is your friend when the sun is shining, when they got food in their belly and money in their pockets. But what happens when the chips are down, when their pockets are empty, when they're hungry and you're hungry, and there's only half a piece of bread on the table? Like, how do people respond then? And I feel like that
That's
is such an important, yeah.
it's very much, and you combine that with the community. Absolutely, much more learnings even there. That community spirit is so important because, yes, there will be conflicts. I often say, if you think leadership is about avoiding conflict, no, it's not. Conflict is inevitable. It is there. But how we deal with it, that's the question. And that's the leadership that really comes through. How do you look out for each other? Yes, are you becoming selfish? Are you damaging relationships? Are you going for win?
Yeah,
Are you playing power games and you need to see somebody lose for you to get
yeah,
a sense of winning?
yeah.
It's so much learning right there again.
Yeah, I love that. I always say, even if you don't have an ethical bone in your body, even if deep down inside you're secretly a sinister, evil person, if you're trying to succeed in business, you have to look to play long-term games with long-term people and love on everyone that you can. Because your customers aren't going to come back unless they feel loved and cared for, right? Your staff are going to leave. And I've had people come and try to get my team and I to help them. And then we find, and this happened a few times, we find why we've been come to ask and help is because past staff like sabotage things on their way out. But it's the same, you just have to love on yourself or you'll burn out. So it's like the only way to survive is to do business with love and to focus on long-term gains with long-term people. And I just think that was what you said was so powerful. So
I just delivered a workshop last week and I made a big statement and I said, if you don't understand people, you don't understand business. Some people were shaking their heads. How are you talking about? There's much more to it. I said, yes, there's much more to it. But fundamentally, the last time I checked, all my clients, they were people, they were human beings. The last time I checked, all our employees were human beings.
yeah.
The last time I checked, all the stakeholders that we deal with, partnerships, collaborate, whatever it is, they were human beings.
Yep.
So yes, I'll say it again. If you don't understand people, you don't understand business.
Yeah, 100%. I love Elon Musk is quoted as saying all a company is a group of people that solve a problem for another group of people, and they solve that problem via a product or service. So
Absolutely.
like what you're saying is that it's so real and it's so true. And I think that's even part of what we're going through right now. Not to get political, but I feel like everybody can tell and see that the world geopolitically is going through a little bit of a growing pains, let's call it. And I think part of it is trying to shake off parasites that just feed on the system where there is no value add. There is no value add. And I think that's a big, anyways, it's just like what you said, like it's all about people helping people, but maybe, and I don't want to, I'm not trying to throw anyone under a bus specifically, but I think some industries may be more prone to this than others, where take the stock market, if you can create panic in people, you can predict which way stocks are going to go, and therefore you can make a lot of profit. Or if you are in a political arena, if you can persuade public opinion a certain way, and you have backdoor deals, and these are non-value contributing like business endeavors, right? That doesn't serve anyone but one or a small group of people. And again, like I said, not to get political, but I almost feel like if you were to err on oversimplifying the world right now, I almost feel like it's an effort for humanity to try to shake those off.
Yeah, there's so many important points again that you raise. Let's throw them all in before we already talked about. There's so many learnings right there. I believe that, yes, over the last few years, the world has become very complex. I don't think you can succeed by yourself. What's
Right.
that beautiful saying? If you want to go fast, or if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, go as a group and
Yeah.
surround yourself with great people.
Yeah.
Coming back to community, I believe there's a beautiful balance that needs to happen in leadership. And I say that from all my heart and with all respect. But leadership always starts with self-leadership, because moving from dependence mindset to an independent mindset is already a huge achievement. Too often we are so focusing on how to change other people and what should happen on the other side of the world. No control over that at all. So why would I waste my time on it? Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be informed, but we need to be very careful where we put the energy.
Yeah.
Am I going to be worked up with what's happened on the other side of the world without having any impact? Or am I doing a good deed within our community, with our neighbors in our sports club? And I often say, when I'm talking about leadership, I'm not talking about the president or prime minister. I'm
No,
talking about the leaders in our family, in our community, in our sports club.
yeah.
And the big challenge that I see, once we achieve that independent mindset, the self-leadership, we are quite often afraid to go into a collaboration, to go into a partnership, to go into a joint venture, because we're afraid that we go back into dependency. And that's probably the biggest misunderstood step. Moving up and having collaboration is not about depending on each other. It's about two independent people coming together and collaborating by leveraging their strength, where
Yes.
1+1 not just equal 2, but actually 3 or even more. This is the key word of leverage. I benefit from your values and from your strength, and you benefit from my strength, and you have strength that I don't have, and
Mm,
I have strength that you don't have.
mm,
And
mhm.
that's a big part where we become very interdependent. In other
Yes,
words,
absolutely.
collaborate.
That was in my head the whole time you were talking. I'm like, and I even wrote it down. I literally wrote it down with a circle on my notes. I'm a writer downer. I wrote down interdependence. That's, I agree 1,000%. We talked about in the prep call before this interview how I'd spent a bunch of money and had a bunch of had 10 assistants help me go through all the academic literature, try to identify the critical success factors for small and medium-sized businesses. And we found 8 critical success factors. Now, there was a 9th factor, and this is lending to what you had just said. The 9th factor that we found that impacts business success is government and economic conditions. You can either have a friendly government or a hostile government, a good economy or a bad economy. But what we learned is that an individual business owner can't do much to influence those. And so it doesn't matter if you have a good government or a bad one, or a good economy or a bad economy. All you can do is focus on the 8 critical success factors. And they are self-efficacy, market intelligence, strategic planning, marketing strategy, sales strategy and skills, money management, business operations, and business intelligence. And a lot of these sound self-explanatory. And we called it self-efficacy, not leadership, because when we did delve, after we had the 8, we drilled into each of them. We found that leadership is its own pillar. So it's a part of self-efficacy. And that for us in our research, we found that self-efficacy is demonstrating specific personality traits, leadership skills, and personal disciplines. And so it's
Love it.
exactly like what you're saying, the personality traits. One of the personality traits was a locus of control, which means being a control freak about what you can control. And then extroversion, openness to experience, agreeableness, conscientiousness, acceptance of criticism and feedback. These are the personality traits most strongly correlated with success in entrepreneurs. And then in terms of leadership skills, it was self-awareness skills, but then even more than that, coming back to how you've been beating this drum of community, it's communication and cooperation skills, it's emotional intelligence skills, and it's adaptability. And then, of course, in the personal disciplines, it's things like time management, a sense of urgency, mental health habits, physical health habits, time management stuff. This is all it all just speaks to you have to take care of yourself. You can't need, if you need to be babysat, you are not an asset.
That's
So,
it. And Daryl, you're preaching to the converted right here. And I have to say, control, one of those words that really stick out to me is control. And somehow over the years, especially the last few years, control almost became a dirty word. And it can be, it depends on how we're using it. Control to me, and I often say to people, would you like to live not only a successful, but also a fulfilled life? And they say, oh, sure. I said, you better be in charge and you better be in control of your mindset, in control of your emotion, in control of your decision making, and in control of your actions and behaviors, because those 4 elements create ultimately your success and your fulfillment.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. 100%.
Intriguing enough, we talked about Mother Nature here before. Another thing that just popped to my mind was I delivered a keynote to book publishers, a launch that we had. And I did a small delivery on book collaboration because you mentioned my bestseller. I did it, and ironically I did. On Amazon, became an international bestseller. What I talked about there is about that dependence, independence, interdependence. And what I used was a geese metaphor. Because a flock of geese, a lot of research has been done. And interesting enough, did you know that the entire flock can fly about 70% further with exactly the same amounts of energy as if they would actually fly by themselves?
Wow.
Because of the air resistance, of course. And I talked about the whole flock because the flock flies in a V shape. The leader is at the front. The leader has the most air resistance and the ones behind benefit. But after a while, the leader gets exhausted, especially if they have to be at the front all the time. So what are they doing?
They're rotating.
The one at the front, they rotate. After a while, they rotate. Meaning the next goose takes over. Also presupposes that each geese is very clear on the actual end destination. In a business, I call this vision and purpose. They all know and they all fly in exactly the same direction because they know they have to head south during winter time. How do we apply that in a business? How often do we have independent people driven by scarcity and fear and limitation and a mindset of limitation that becomes so selfish that each one is on a survival mode, and the survival mode is I'll just have to take care of myself and survive because I have to put a bowl of soup on the table for my family. There is no interest of business. There is no interest of teamwork and collaboration because it is the blood is pumped into the reptile brain at the amygdala right there. There is no more blood in the frontal lobe that is about innovation and creativity. And down goes the drain. So coming back to the flock of geese, they are there, they fly together, they rotate leadership. And if a geese, that's talking about commitment, if a geese becomes injured or sick, another 2 geese actually stay with the injured geese until it's fit again. So how often do we see commitment of organization to really look after their staff, where they feel that they matter, that they belong, and that they can contribute? To me, these are the 3 main principles to create inspiration, motivation, and empowerment.
Say those again.
The shortest HR list in the world to really get the best out of people is, do I matter? Another word for significance. Do I belong? Because after all, we are social creatures. And the last part, this is really where things pay off. Can I contribute? We want to contribute way beyond ourselves, and that's the need of the 6 principles of human beings, the need of growth and contribution beyond us. And sometimes we do that by becoming parents, by starting our own business, by having pets, or by volunteer work. So in different ways, the principle is the same. But we have to be taken care of it along the way.
So 2 questions. It was inspiration, motivation. What was the third one?
and empowerment.
Empowerment. And what are the 6? You said the 6 needs of human beings.
They are a bit adjusted. You may heard about the Maslow's pyramids. I
Right.
think that's a bit out of date. There's a lot of learning still and value in that, where he talks about shelter and food. We are in a lucky position still today that this is almost taken for granted. We need to be careful with that as well.
Right.
But more from a principle of a human being. The first 2 needs to me is certainty and uncertainty or variety. Now, there's a paradox because they are actually the opposite of each other. Interesting enough, you talked about emotional intelligence before. What are we doing to reach a level of control, comfort, certainty, and security? We're doing a lot. We have habits, we have routines that gives us the certainty, the control, and the safety and the comfort. I know what I know, comfort zone. But what's happened if we have too much certainty and not enough variety or
Right.
uncertainty? We
I think
get bored. And if we don't do anything about boredom, we actually fall into
sabotage. Yeah.
depressed. We actually get depressed. And before we do this, we quite often sabotage that creates very unresourceful variety or uncertainty where we think, yeah, I can do my job, but am I getting away if I miss the deadline and submit my stuff late a day or 2? Very unresourceful. So we need to have innovation. We need to have challenges. We need to have something that challenges us where we can really find out what are we made of.
Mm-hmm.
New challenges. I always say, don't make the same mistake, make bigger and better mistakes in the future. That's growth.
Yeah, I have a personal experience with this, and I actually recently talked to a friend. Out of respect, I'll save his name. I'll spare his name, but he just experienced something that I experienced years ago. So my claim to fame, my followers probably a lot of them already know, but I helped a couple of companies make a couple of $1 million and was paid handsomely in commissions. And I essentially retired early. I had a mini retirement. This background, for those that see video of the beach, this is a reminder that I basically went and retired. But when I had over a year of money saved up, bank cash in the bank, there was nothing stop. I'm from Canada. Marijuana was legal there before it was legal. And so when I had a year worth of money in the bank, I felt, hey, it's almost, you have to be careful what your rewards are. Like your kids, when they do their homework now, you can have some candy. You're teaching the child, oh, because I'm good, I get candy. And then when they become adults, you have to be careful your reward mechanisms. For a lot of people, like, oh, I'm done work, I'm going to have a beer type thing. For me, it was, I'm done all work, I'm going to smoke a joint, relax, go to bed. But now when I had a year worth of income, I was like, you know what? I'm so on top of my game. Why can't I wake up and smoke a joint? Why can't I show up to this meeting stoned? I don't need this client. If they can't love me for who I am, I don't need them. And what I found is that when the crutches that I like hand to mouth, when you're hand to mouth and you need that paycheck every month, you don't want to mess it up. So you protect things. But when that like mental construct is gone, your vices, like the weeds, can take over the garden. And that was when I did have a mini retirement, and I went to the beach, and after about a week, I think I lasted maybe 10 days. I was like, what am I doing? Like, I need more than just be chasing girls and just.
Oh, love it. Love it. And Daryl, that's often what I say. It's not the utopia. It's not what would you do if you have $1 million. I quite often bring that down, and I do this exercise with a lot of clients as well, where I say, how does your ideal average day looks like in life? And people say, what are you talking about? I would go on a beautiful tropical island with palm trees, as I can just see at the back of your screen. And I say, that is not life. That is escaping from life. And that's not what I'm talking about, because you're going to do this for 2-3 weeks and you're going to be bored because there's no fulfillment. We are value fulfilling machines. And quite often what we value is being challenged. It is being find out what we are truly made of. It's not about playing it safe. That is mediocre. That is giving a certainty. Yes, there's space because we need to recharge our energy in the comfort zone. So we don't want to alienate the comfort zone, the control and the certainty. That's important. But we do this so we can step out again and challenge ourselves on a higher level.
Mhm.
So the first two human core needs is all about balance. And that doesn't mean 50-50. It means based on your personality type.
Right.
Some people need a lot of certainty. For them, a balance is 80% certainty, 20% variety. These are quite often what I call sameness people. These are the people who are very good with repetitive work. They just want to be on a computer or on a reception. They want to do repetitive work. They're happy. Please don't judge them.
Yeah.
Accept it.
Right. Well, we
But
need
then
them.
we have, but then we have, and this is a great asset to a business. How cool is it if you have people who are doing repetitive work? You never have to check on them. It's just done like a Swiss watch.
Yep.
It just clicks and ticks and it works and nothing has to be done. It's just beautiful.
Yep.
On the other hand, of course, we have the daredevils, as I call them, the ones who have to jump out of an airplane with a parachute or bungee jumping or climbing a frozen waterfall. For them, they need 80% variety and maybe 20% certainty. Otherwise, they will resign, they will walk out.
Yep.
Think about that for a second. Put the daredevil on a reception and ask them to do repetitive work, or take the person at the reception and put them in business development, for example.
Yep.
And that's the beauty of understanding the principles of human beings.
Yep. Yep. I love that. You brought up something when I was a kid. There was a movie called Groundhog Day, and it really had a huge impact. Have you seen this movie?
I've seen it. Yeah, love it.
Yeah, this guy, for those that haven't, he's got a poor character. He's not very developed as an individual in the sense of there's a lot of rough edges, we'll say, about him as an individual. And he goes to this town to celebrate Groundhog Day, and he has his day. And he's not really a good person. And he ends up waking up experiencing the day he just had, and he's caught in this time loop where he keeps reliving the same day over and over. And it's a great movie. It's entertaining, but essentially, spoiler alert, what ends up happening is he eventually submits to the fact that he's stuck in this time loop, and it seems like for eternity. And he decides that if this has to be my existence, I'm going to make it the best existence possible. And he works on himself, and he's like at the right place at the right time to catch the cat falling out of the tree. And he learns how to play piano, and he learns how to smooth people, all this stuff. And he ends up falling in love with his girl. And then eventually, when he has this perfect day, he wakes up and has the next day, and his life is carried on. And it really struck me, and it had me feel like, what is the life I would need to live every day? What is the 24-hour routine I would need to have to both love who I am and where I've arrived when I'm 80? And I think
Love it.
you brought it up. I think that's a powerful message for people.
And gives you a lot of insights, because if you have no working in there at all, and I wouldn't block out 8 hours of work on an ideal average day.
Right.
But there must be some work, because if there's nothing in there, you really need to consider if you're in the right career or right job.
Right. Would you be able to do that for 80, for whatever, if you're listening to this and you're 20, for 60 years? Could you do 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year for 60 years? Yeah. What would you suggest are some of the skills or behaviors that are important to improve and develop? We talked about some indirectly, but to really hit the nail on the head for people.
Yeah, look, the behavior, I'm doing a lot of work in influencing behavioral change or positive behavioral change. We may need to step back. That's an interesting part as well. We are so good in judging behaviors, isn't it? Why? Because it's the last thing that happens.
Yeah.
It's the last thing that happens in a big, long sequence of things. And that's why I often say judging the behavior is a waste of time, because everything else happens already beforehand.
Right.
We need to step back. It all starts with, what are we focusing on in life? Are we focusing on positive or negatives? The power of focus. Amazing. Are we obsessed by drama and problems? Because one of the big learnings that I had is you get what you focus on to the exclusion of everything else. Because everything else fades away. Because we delete, we distort, and we generalize information every single second of the day, and that's a generalization itself. So whenever I use a language of every single second, each one of us, yeah, but Daryl, you would have done the same thing in the same situation I've been in. justifying things. This is how we generalize, and we know how dangerous that is, because that's where the stereotyping lives. That's where we often get overwhelmed. I'll tell you a quick real life story. I love real life examples. The other day I did some coaching with a beautiful lady. I walked in, she was quite worked up, and she said, I'm so glad that we have this coaching session because nobody's listening to me at all. And I said, oh, thank you. And she was like, what do you mean? I said, well, you just told me that I'm not listening to you. She said, Mama, hang on. Yeah, you are listening to me, but nobody else. You see how she was holding on to the generalization still of nobody's listening to me. Yes, you're the exception, but nobody else.
Mhm.
And I challenged her and I said, that's intriguing, because when I walked in, I observed you, how you communicated with the lady at the reception. And to me, it awfully looked like she's very keen and interested to hear what you had to say.
Mhm.
She was still holding on and said, yeah, she's listening to me as well, but nobody else. And
Mhm.
at that time I said, come on, sorry my French, but I said, cut the crap.
Yeah,
Who specifically is not listening to you?
yeah.
And this is what she did. She pointed with her finger to the office next to her. She said, the guy over there is not listening to me. Now you may think, you're a bit of a stickler, but think about that from a mindset perspective, because that's the next part in the sequence of creating behavior.
Mhm.
If we tell ourselves that nobody is listening to us, are we not saying that we take on the whole world and that the whole world is against us? Good luck trying to fight with that challenge and to solve that problem. That is way too big. That paralyzes us. But what I've done is I recovered valuable information that she deleted. And within about 3 questions, I brought her from a mindset, the whole world is against me, to I have a communication problem with one particular person in that company. Do you
Right,
think I made a shift in mindset and therefore in how she behaves and
right,
also how she feels, which is another part before the behaviors?
right. Which is so powerful because now that you've identified the problem, there's a solution where before she perhaps was feeling a sense of overwhelm and almost maybe a sense of futility because there wasn't a clear path to how do I now she has a clear path. She knows, and sometimes was it, I think Einstein said this, sometimes clearly defining the problem is half of the solution. And on that, yeah. The other part is
And
that
it,
I needed to collaborate with you on that.
yes, and he also said quite often we can't say we can't solve a problem with the same mindset that created the problem in the first place.
Right,
And
right,
what I've done is I literally shifted her perspective, what she focuses on, how she thinks and how she feels, completely shifted the perspective, where she now demonstrated new behaviors, much more resourceful and empowering behaviors, because she felt like, oh yeah, I can deal with that. And I was curious and said, all right, tell me more. So what makes you say that? That curiosity. What makes you say that? How did you came to that conclusion? Now we're tapping in, by the way, into the beliefs
yeah,
and the BS that we tell ourselves. And we all know what BS stands for. Yes, for belief system. It actually stands for the other BS as well. But quite often it's crazy the BS we tell ourselves here, Pierre.
yeah.
Because nobody is listening to me. Is that not a belief? Of course it is, but very disempowering, very limiting, that just paralyzes me and drags me down, spiral dynamics, and the behaviors become very dysfunctional. Versus, I'm actually quite a good communicator, and thank you for listening to what I have to say. But yes, I also recognize that I have a particular challenge with one of my work colleagues. So I'm curious to find out, how can I overcome that? How can I get my message across with positive impact, even with that individual next to my office?
How empowering is that?
Complete shift within 5 minutes. The person has completely changed their mindset. Intriguing enough. Let me ask you that question, Daryl. Has anything changed with the external situation and the fact that the guy is not listening to her?
100% no.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing has changed externally of her, but what has changed is the way she looks at it.
Yeah.
What's that beautiful saying? If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now we can solve a problem and the behaviors are completely different.
Yeah.
Is it not fascinating? And I wish we would learn those things in school before we even hit the workforce.
I
So
know.
many CEOs tell me, Martin, where have you been 20, 30 years ago?
Yep.
Life would have been so much easier.
Yes. So much easier. I just had a mastermind meeting I facilitated, and one of the CEOs that was there said part of your communication strategy was, what was it? It was make sure you touch the heart before, I want to find it, touch a heart before you ask for a hand. And I thought
Love
it was
it.
really powerful in terms of trying to connect with people. That was part of her, because she runs a company with thousands of staff. And we're talking about communicating better. She said, make sure you touch a heart before you ask for a hand. And I
And
think,
that's where we understand that we work with individual people. And as beautiful as it is that we are all unique and special, we also become quite unpredictable. You really touch a beautiful part, which is also an area that happens before the behaviors. Can we agree that some people are very logical people and others are very emotional people?
I
And yes, I often say to people, with the people that are quite intellect, the IQ is really important. We need to be able to articulate things very clearly. That is where the vocal and the verbal language is important. We need to find the right words. We need to find the research and the statistics. A couple of months ago, one of the big universities did research on meditation. And guess what? It's working.
Mhm.
Now, for me, as quite an emotional person, I think, really, do I need any professors from a big Harvard or whatever university to tell me that meditation is working, something we practice for thousands of years? Or am I trusting my intuition, which is more the emotional intelligence and the people with intuition, to say, if I do 15 minutes or half an hour meditation in the morning, and I feel much better on an emotional level with more clarity, is that not enough proof? So what
Mhm.
I'm saying is, yes, articulating things, which is really important, but wow, leadership, as you said, is about also, you want to write this down, articulating with people,
Yeah.
touching their heart, articulate, touching people on an emotional level. Because I see that in presentation often. The brain is, as I call them, the captain of the ship. They are very intrigued by the introduction, as you've done as well. How many awards did I win? How many best-selling books did I write? What other credentials do I have? Other people, the emotional people, they say, you know what? I don't care how much you know until I know how much you care.
Yeah.
And that's touching their heart. And I can only do that through trust and articulating on an emotional level.
This is a good experiment people can try, and it's really simple. Next time you give someone a hug so your hearts touch. So you can hug someone, like when you hug, intentionally do a heart-to-heart hug and tell me if the hug feels better or not. Tell me if it's a better hug. You can just test. You can test with your girlfriend, your boyfriend. Do it one way, be like, yeah, and then do like a heart-to-heart hug. And notice, is there a subtle difference or not? That's what hugs are about, touching our hearts together. I never
It,
really got that until one day. That's the whole purpose of a hug. And it's a really impactful thing. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see your clients and other entrepreneurs making? Is there like a list of the biggest 3 mistakes or the biggest 5 mistakes that you see you deal with in your line of work?
where should I start? I think Beautiful question. I think as unique as we all are, we quite often forget that we have a lot more in common than actually differences. So yes, there are huge pattern that it seems, I think I've seen that before. I think we talked about it, yet it comes back. In workshop, I see the same thing. Quite often I ask a few questions in the beginning, or I ask people, what would you like to get out of the session? The precious time we have together. I hear about 5, 6 different ideas, and then suddenly the room agrees. I can relate to this. I have a very similar problem. And I say, is there anything we haven't covered yet? Is there anything that we haven't addressed yet? And people say, no, it's actually fascinating. I have very similar challenges after all. One we already addressed, which is the focus on behaviors. And what I'm saying here is people are not their behaviors. It doesn't mean they should not take responsibility for their behavior. Yes, they should. But what I'm saying as well is unless people know how to change the behaviors, they will do the same thing. Remember the first C, the certainty, the comfort zone? We do the best we can with the resources we have available. And until we know, until we have a different perspective, until we have better tools, leadership skills, we will keep judging behaviors. What we need to do, and this is a big mistake, what we need to do as leaders is we need to look behind the behaviors. What's happened first? It's almost like a metaphor, the iceberg thing. The iceberg, the tip that sticks out of the ocean is the behavior. It's what we see. And I often say, be more curious rather than furious with dysfunctional behaviors. Don't wonder and why are they behaving that way. Look behind or look below the ocean level. Look at what they focus on. Look at how they think. Look on how they feel. Look on how they make decisions. And all of those aspects create the behaviors. Let's quickly go through external environment. We talked about what's happening around us. Do you think as a leader, if we can create and foster a more inclusive and supportive workplace culture, do you think the behavior of the people within that culture changes?
Yes, 100%.
Of course they are. Do you think if we help individuals shifting their focus from problems to more solution-based thinking, do you think they're changing their behaviors?
Yeah, that's a huge one. I have a lot of people that I'm a health nut, and people sometimes ask me about I'm trying to diet, whatever. And I always say, I never focus on what I'm going to avoid. I just focus on eating certain things more. I really don't.
Yeah,
I don't go, oh, my cheat day is Thursday. I just go, I should eat more of these before I can have any of those. And what ends up
yeah.
happening is I'm full. Or
Fascinating. And remember what I said, you get what you focus on to the exclusion of everything else. I often say, and please help me out here, because as you may know, I'm in Australia for the last 20 years. One thing that really happens here, and I'm not sure if that's just a cultural thing, but I do believe it's a worldwide problem or challenge with human beings. We are so obsessed by the problem and by the things we don't want and the drama.
yeah,
When I came to Australia, you ask an Aussie, how are you going? They say, not bad. What
yeah,
are you up to? Not much. Where are you going? Not far. How
yeah,
much was that? Oh, I tell you what, wasn't cheap.
yeah,
And you think, they always tell you exactly the thing that they are not.
yeah,
Even with kids, don't spill the milk. What are we focusing on?
yeah.
Spill the milk, because the unconscious mind cannot process negatives. We take everything as a flat value.
Yeah,
So if we say spill the milk or don't spill the milk, what we focus on is spilling the milk.
yeah,
Now for our listeners, if they say, Martin, you're really going coco loco here,
yeah.
you lost the plot, you lost me. Let's do a quick exercise. Daryl, under no circumstances, please do not, and I hope I'm very clear, do not think of a pink elephant bathing on a beautiful beach with some palm trees around. You literally had to bring a visual up in your mind's eye, in your thought process. and how that gonna look like to then say, oh, I shouldn't do that, but it's too late.
Yeah.
So every time we say, I don't want to be angry, I don't want to be frustrated anymore, I don't want to deal with the same problems from my past, what we do, and I just use my video here because we have a visual. If I look at the past, and that's maybe on the left of you or behind you, we have different emotions and imagination to where our past is. But if you're focusing on the past, just ask yourself, where's your future? It's in the opposite direction.
Right.
And what you do right now is you're looking at the past and say, I don't want this anymore. And you literally turn your back towards the future. And then we're wondering why we're experiencing the same thing
Yes.
over and over again. I'm calling that a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes.
Biggest mistake of leader, we live too much in the past and compare to past experiences.
Yep.
If they were great, that's where we usually excel. But if they were negative and we had some failures or setback,
Yep. Or even living too
we
much in
create
the
the same
future.
thing.
Even some leaders are so far in the future, they're skipping the next steps that have to happen to get to that future. That's another thing too. Some people, they're such dreamers, which is a beautiful, wonderful skill to have, because some people, I'm spiritual, not religious, but I love this quote. It's, don't expect others to understand your grind when God didn't give them your vision. And I think, again, whatever your belief system aside, I just think it speaks really real truth to, like, when you have a vision, some people, they live so far in the future, but what's happening is they're not watching the next steps. They're thinking 10 steps ahead, but you got to get the next steps. And so that's why some people don't have success, is that they're living in the dream versus building a road and plan there, which comes
Yeah,
back to
and
talking about the different seasons.
love it. And can we connect that with the previous conversations? Fascinating emotional intelligence. If somebody experiences guilt, shame, regrets, you name it, negative emotions, what are they focusing on? They
Well,
must focus on the past, because any regrets, any guilt, any shame must happen in the previous life
yeah,
or previously in their life.
yeah,
What's happened with people that are feeling stress and anxiety? They probably live way too much in the future because they think of, oh, I'm supposed to do this by tomorrow, and then I should be doing this as well by next week and the next month. And they're focusing so much in the future, living too much in the future, that they get stressed. So I call this the reverse psychology. If you feel stressed or feel anxiety or even close to a burnout, you need to bring things back. If everything becomes too much in this chaos and busy and ever-changing world, which by the way happens to me as well with all the knowledge I have, and I sometimes feel like a hypocrite, but the beauty is I'll just go back to my wisdoms and say, Martin, please apply what you teach to others. And that's where I say, what can I do today? What is the one task that I can do today that gets me one step closer to my vision and purpose? And I'm focusing purely on that, and I delete, and everything else fades away. This is something that I can complete maybe in 15 minutes or half an hour. Once I completed this task, it gives me motivation, it gives me certainty to go to the next task. Learn from the past, live in the moment, but plan for the future. And whatever you do today determines your future. Let's go back to one of the nature many years ago, and I don't know, came up with the conversation we had. When I dropped off my beautiful son at school, I saw a snake on the ground, not a snake, a snail. Yeah, we have snakes here as well in Australia. A snail was on the ground, and he only was about 6 years old. And instantly said, can I step on it? And I said, no, Oliver, don't step on it. That's a creature. Let's just kneel down and let's just observe the snail for a moment. Let's appreciate nature and the animal world. So we kneeled down, we looked at the snake, and I was like, oh my God. That pause, the reflection, connecting to nature. And I thought, I learned something huge here. Do you know how we often talk about the fork in the road? Should I go left or should I go right? What if I take the wrong road? What if I take the wrong one instead of the right one? We are so good in limiting ourselves to two-dimensional thinking. That's not what leadership is all about. Even with, and coming back to politics, we don't want to go in there too much, but yes, even if we have an election, if we have a referendum, the only options we have is either yes or no,
Yeah,
good or bad, right or wrong,
I hate that.
left or right. And I thought, look at that snail. That snail can go over concrete, through deep grass. It can even climb up a fence that is about what, 200, 300 times taller than its body. That snail can go wherever that snail wants to go. Why on earth, as human beings, are we simply limiting our decision making to two dimensions?
Mm,
There's much more to it.
mm.
The other epiphany which really hit me hard was this. You know that mucus they have at the back, that snail trail?
Yep.
This is where it hits me hard, and I get a bit emotional here because that changed my life. And you think, really? Yes, but small changes, small, profound awareness creates big changes over time. I thought to myself, I always thought that the path is in front of us. No, the path is not in front of us. We create the path. But where the path really is actually behind us. It's the snail trail.
Mm,
It's what we leave behind every single day with the actions and the behaviors that we take, moment for moment, that not just creates the future, but also our legacy, how we will be remembered
mm,
long after we are gone.
mm,
To me, that is deep, that is profound, but this is really, truly important, where I understand, why am I on this planet? What's that beautiful saying? And somebody came up much smarter than me. I can't remember who it was who said, the two most important days in your life are the ones that you were born and the one day that you figured out why. That's
yeah,
your purpose.
I love that. I love that. I love that so much. I had a similar epiphany, and it's exactly what you're talking about in the sense of I felt like virtue equals growth. Like I've been so distressed, like talking about always thinking about what's going wrong in the world and that sort of thing. And I realized that evil isn't defeated, it gets left behind. The snake eats its own tail. And so the way to overcome the negative in the world is to focus on the good and what you want, and you simply outgrow it. That's really, and that was like what your snail analogy, that's what reminded me. It was, I felt it was really profound, where you're like, it's about the trail I'm leaving behind. And for me, I was like, it's about leaving that stuff behind by focusing on what I can control and becoming more than and outgrowing it. And I just think that's so powerful. Martin,
It really is.
this has been such an insightful call. If people want to learn more, if they want to follow, if they want to continue the conversation, what is the best way for them to get in touch or connect?
Daryl, let me take this opportunity to say thank you very much for having me. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. Organic, authentic, just having a beautiful, deep conversation that hopefully is of value to all the listeners as well. If they are interested to know more about myself, they can go to profoundleadership.com.au, or there's a beautiful online platform that we establish more and more, which is the globalleadershiphub.com, where we have short courses, where we have blogs, where we have so many different things. And of course, there's always LinkedIn that I connect with people. So please feel free to send me a LinkedIn request. It is Martin Probst, Probst, but I'm sure you put a bit of name and a bit of information on your website as well.
Yes, I will. So that's for LinkedIn. It's Martin, Martin, last name Probst, or you can go visit profoundleadership.com.au for Australia, or globalleadershiphub.com. That's global leadership hub, HUB.com. Martin, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a great conversation. I have pages of notes. Probably have to have you come back for a follow-up Thank you for coming and sharing with my followers and I, knowing that you have your own followers, your own clients, your own family, your own people to take care of. Thank you for coming and sharing with all of us so we can all perform a little bit better.
Daryl, thanks for having me. I hope I earned the privilege of your time. So thank you very much, not just from my intellect, but also from the heart.
Sending love, my friend, sending love.